Tell Us How to Make It Better is partnering with the Readiness Lab, the home for podcasts, webinars, and training in the field of emergency and disaster services.
I think you're 100% right. Usually people walk around until something negative happens and then they realize, and that's our goal, is just let's not wait till something bad happens. If we can get ahead of that and educate them prior to that, so that when the thing happens, they're a little better prepared and they can serve themselves, their families better, and then also be an asset to their community. Huge value in that.
I'm George Siegel, and this is the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. Every week, we introduce you to people who are working on real-world problems and providing actual solutions. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this week's Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. In my documentary film, The Last House Standing, we showed you different parts of the country, the disasters that happen year after year, and the consequences that it places on the lives of the people that live there. And the reality is that we can all do things to be better prepared for when that disaster strikes. My guests today are Jason, Perez, and Wesley Long. They're the co-founders of Instinct Ready, whose mission is to educate, prepare, and equip individuals, households, and families for disasters. They are active first responders with a passion for education. First off, thank you for being first responders. You guys don't get enough thanks from people, and it's much appreciated what you do.
You are welcome. It is rewarding work, though.
Thanks, George. Yeah, we're happy to be here.
Yeah, it is. You risk your lives for the rest of us. So, guys, what is the problem or issue that you have identified and that you're working on?
You want to start, Wesley, or should I?
Go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
Yeah, in a nutshell, the problem that we've identified is an overall lack of community education in the emergency preparedness, disaster preparedness realm. A lot of the initiatives, a lot of the solutions out there, the education is more for professionals, people in the industry, and the everyday household, the everyday person is sometimes left out of the conversation and aren't really given the tools to be able to protect themselves. So that's in a nutshell, that's the problem that we've identified.
Yeah, it's two things, like Jason said. They can't protect themselves, and then they also, since they're not educated, they can't really participate in the emergency preparedness initiatives that are happening usually to them and for them, but not necessarily with them. And that's our focus. Help them understand that they play a role. The whole community is a specific thing that emergency managers understand, but the individuals and families, they play a role in that. So we're trying to help them understand that role so that they can be better served themselves and also serve others.
I always like to ask how this affects other people's lives. In the case of what you guys are doing, I think it's obvious that, human nature is that people just don't think bad stuff is going to happen to them. And so we all kind of just muddle along until something bad happens. And then we realize just how unprepared we are. You probably see that on a regular basis.
Well, I think COVID, right? The world globally, things were kind of trucking along. Then all of a sudden, boom, we all hit this and we realized we're one community because this one sickness is literally spreading around the world because of our community. So I think you're 100% right. Usually people walk around until something negative happens and then they realize, and that's our goal, is just let's not wait till something bad happens. If we can get ahead of that and educate them prior to that, so that when the thing happens, they're a little better prepared and they can serve themselves, their families better, and then also be an asset to their community. Huge value in that.
Yeah, I think you probably realize it better than I do. What you're up against is that we are in a reactive society rather than a preventative society. Mm-hmm. People don't want to do the work up front. They'd rather have to play catch up later. And that's a whole attitude that's very difficult to change. How do you combat that?
That's it's a difficult one to combat. And it's unrealistic to think that we're going to be able to get everybody on board with this thinking. You're always going to have a certain amount of people that are just going to be resistive to these ideas. But trying to just, even if our goal is even if we could just get a small portion of the population, finding those who have more proactive thinking and who want to learn, because there are a decent amount of individuals that when you present them the knowledge, they grasp it and they run with it. So it's trying to make little inroads, and then that becomes contagious when you have small portions of even just a small portion of the population that are, getting involved in these preparedness behaviors. They're starting to take a different look at preparedness. They're just building that community capability, and it can sometimes spread. So it's hard to get everybody on board, but it's just trying to find those where we can make little inroads.
So give me an example of how you work. So somebody finds you on the website. Is it usually an individual? Is it a family? Is it a business? What's the profile of the person that needs your services?
Yeah, so the profile of the person that needs our services is everyone, but the people that find us are the ones who are proactively looking for solutions. So they may find us by searching go bags or emergency preparedness or something like that, because we do sell products. And again, our disclaimer for everyone that's in the emergency preparedness realm, we get it, right? The best possible go bag someone can have is the one they build themselves, right? That meets a minimum survival standard. Totally understand that. The problem we find is these individuals who are searching for us and find us online, and they tell us time and time again, they get overwhelmed by what should be in my go bag. What should I put in it? How much stuff should there be? What things should I address? So yes, the best option is build your own, but it's so overwhelming because there's no governing body that says, here's what you need, that most people don't. And then they have nothing. So then they find us and they see a pre-made kit and they hear us talk and they connect with us and they like our product. They try it out. Generally, then they'll take a class, because we have a class online as well, because we feel preparing you or equipping you is less important than educating you, right? So we educate, prepare, and equip. We'd rather educate first. Don't buy a bag, get the education. They take the class, and then usually what happens is now they want their friends and family to be safe also. So then they contact us and say, hey, I got 10 or 15 people, a little pocket of this community. Can you put the class on for all of us? Yeah, no problem. Then that spreads. So usually that's what happens. It's very hard to sell someone on the idea of something that they don't know they need, right? But once they do find us through one of our products or one of our initiatives, they usually love it, grasp onto it, and then that's when it grows.
Yeah, it's been mostly like a word of mouth.
Sorry, go ahead,
yeah,
Jason.
No, I was just saying, like Wesley said, it's really, it's like you said, it's a hard concept to get people on board. But once one person gets it, they just start telling their friends and their family about it. One of our little pull quotes that we have from an individual who has taken our class multiple times, said it's the class you didn't know you needed until you've had it. And so that's kind of the mentality. People don't know they need it, but once they've had it, it's like, wow, this is really important. And then they start spreading it to their friends and family.
Now, when I was making my documentary film, The Last House Standing, we went around to different places in the country where there were major disasters. And the common theme was not being prepared, not understanding what the risks are, and then not realizing the consequences of having taken that risk. And there were people in Malibu fleeing from fire that didn't know what to take from their house. You know, that somebody said you have 10 minutes to evacuate, that's not the time to make your plan.
Right. Or to make a list.
Exactly.
Right? That's not when you start. Yeah.
Yeah. We had one fire expert who say nobody woke up on the day of the disaster and made their fire plan. It has to happen way in advance.
Exactly.
So when you see these disasters, and they're different in each part of the country, what you experience in the Northeast is going to be different than somebody in California. What do you sense is the common theme among people that makes us so not aware that things are going to go wrong?
This is a comment on human nature. So I hate to categorize it, everyone, because every individual is a little bit different, but it's not from a lack of understanding that bad things happen, right? Because we know bad things happen. We get inundated with the news. I think there's a disconnect when people then say, oh, it may not happen here, it may not happen to me, or it may not happen now. They always kick it down the road and think, oh, it'll be later and I'll be ready then. I don't have to prepare now. So I think that type of procrastination is a big thing, because I think, and we found this, when you talk to people as an individual, they get it, right? Groupthink is, we'll be fine. But as an individual, they get it. It's usually just either I've researched it and it's too much, I don't know where to start or where my first bite should be. Therefore, I'm just gonna not look at it and not address it because I can't wrap my brain around it. That's a lot of times what we find, and they appreciate the fact that we take it into bite-sized pieces. We give them a formal plan and a logistical approach to it that is palatable for them.
I think the other thing too is like Wesley said, they haven't been given the tools to know what to do. But I think the other thing is like, I think in our society, we've almost created like a dependency syndrome where it's like something bad happens. And then it's like the assumption is that someone's going to come rescue me. Someone, it's not my responsibility to do something. It's like the responsibility of the first responders, the local state government to like when something bad happens to come bail me out. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder if it's like, that mentality starts to creep in and they don't know what their responsibility is.
Or could be, right? So Jason and I were just talking about this yesterday. We're almost going to try to start changing the vernacular because yes, we are first responders, right? Jason and I are first. You call EMS, we will be there. But technically, who is the first responder when somebody falls down, has a seizure, bumps her? It's the people that are there. Because if they don't respond first and call 911, we can't come. So getting that concept to people that the actual first responders are the people that you live with, the people in your community. You are the first responder because if you see someone fall and they hit their head, you're the first one there that grabs them, tries to keep their head still, tries to wipe away some of the blood, or tries to call 911. You are actually the first responder. Us trained professionals, we come after a first responder has called us. So getting people to understand that you are already involved, whether you think you are or not, you're involved. And if we can just help better educate individuals, give them these tools so they can make better decisions, everyone is going to win.
Yeah, you guys sum it up a lot nicer than I do. I mean, I used to work in the news business and we would have stories every time there's a big storm of the guy that tried to drive across the water crossing or the person who stayed in their house when they were told to evacuate because they were going to be flooding. And then guys like you are risking your lives going out there trying to save somebody who made a choice that they're now endangering other people.
Shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to fight. We have our work cut out for us, but we have, I happen to run into Jason. Our lives, we just intersected at a really, really good time and found each other kind of with the same path and vision. So we were able to collaborate. And not only are we providing, we think, a very valuable service, we're having a ton of fun working together doing it. And we get to learn every single day by the experiences that we share. So for us, it's a win-win-win. If I were to quote Michael Scott,
Yeah, I think it's amazing to see the amount of people. Like I live in Florida, the amount of people that don't have generators, and then they can go weeks without power. In Moore, Oklahoma, where they had major tornadoes year after year, there's a small percentage of people that actually have storm cellars. So do you find where you are in the Northeast that there are people that may not even have a snow shovel? They might not have extra food in their house. They might not have blankets. They might not have firewood. I mean, so many things that they should just be part of your regular life.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, a few weeks ago, I-95, right? Virginia. Now they're not necessarily used to ice storms, but think of all those people on that corridor that had literally nothing in their cars, nothing to help them in any way, shape, or form. No concept that I might need some emergency supplies with me. So I think in the Northeast, yeah, we face it because a lot of times when we deal with something like we have a snowstorm now, what people say is it's the Northeast. This is what we do. Right. It's just we have snow. We have nor'easter to us is a word that we use all the time because it happens. So because of that and the expectation that it happens, I don't know that there's always a preparedness for it because that's just the way things are here. So we always fight that.
Yeah, I think it's like a complacency where it's like we've always been dealing with this and I've been okay all the other times. So every other time in the future is going to be the same. So yeah, that I-95 thing was a mystery to me. Why were so many people on the road? That storm did not sneak up on anybody. It was talked about for days.
Right.
That was my question too.
Like, what are you doing? Right. So we talk about that in our class. In our class, we have a 3-hour class where Jason and I had the privilege to develop and create, basically invent a curriculum that doesn't currently exist. We created this community-based curriculum. And in that, we talk about alerts and warning systems. Most people don't even realize that there's a very, very integrated network of alerts and warning systems. They don't know that. And since they don't know it, they don't know how to tune in, and they don't know the difference between a watch and a warning. that there's levels of intensity difference there, right? So that's part of our education, and that's part of the thing that we're trying to help people understand. When you hear these things, this is what you should be thinking, and this is what it should trigger, and it means don't leave your house, or it means leave your house immediately.
Yeah. When I was in the television news business, I was a weather forecaster, and it is not an exact science. And I tell people that now, even with all the computers we have, we've watched several hurricanes come right towards Tampa, and then they turn. And people weren't prepared, but because the storm turned, they think, it's not going to happen to me. I'm safe.
It'll turn every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys see the movie The World According to Garp?
I haven't seen that yet.
You need to see it. We have a scene from that in our film where Robin Williams is looking at a house with his wife, and while they're looking at it, a plane crashes into the house. And he looks at her and goes, "Honey, we'll take the house." And she goes, "You're crazy." And he goes, "Do you realize the odds of a plane ever hitting this house again? They're astronomical." And I think that's people's mentality, is that we just don't think it's going to happen. And there's that look, and you probably see it when you're rescuing people, that look of shock. Like, how did this happen to me? It's obvious how it happened to them.
You drove here.
Yeah.
That's how you got here. And it was sleeting out.
Do people get billed for those rescues? If I drive into a creek and you have to come save me, are they getting charged for that?
So there's different things. There are different levels of responsibility. There's different insurances, but ultimately, probably you're going to get a bill for some level of that. Like for us, when EMS, if we transport, there is usually a bill associated with that, and it's not a cheap bill. And yeah, if your insurance isn't going to cover, it's going to get kicked back to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So what obstacles do you guys face when you're throwing this out there? How long has the website been up? How long have you been doing this? And what are the obstacles that you think you're running into as you're trying to grow this thing?
So I'll start with the when we started. So it was back in 2018. I originally started the education component, which was then Instinct Education. At that time, I had started doing CPR and first aid education for the community. Just based off of my experiences, I'm like, more people need to know these skills. So I started doing that. And then me and Wesley, we got together shortly after that. And then we officially created Instinct Ready. We incorporated in 2019. And since then, we've been slowly and steadily growing, getting bigger. But as far as obstacles, I think it's just the common obstacle that you have just with this industry in general, just the whole concept of preparedness, is just getting people to understand the importance of it and that they need to be taking actions.
I also think one of the obstacles, I'm just going to go ahead and say it because I'm this guy and I don't care about being this guy. The difference between vendors we find is very interesting too. So what we have found is probably 80 to 85% or better of our product sales are going to women. And we just found that intriguing. And then when you talk to dudes, you start to understand why. And I hate to just classify people that way because how people identify and all that. Generally speaking, when a person identifies as a guy looks at our bag, what they look at that as is a challenge. They look at the bag and say, "Oh, how much does it cost? What do you got in there? I can do better than that." It's like, "Oh, all right, man, do better. Like, that's fine." Whereas we found the others look at it and say, "Okay, you've done all the work and the research, and that's just one-stop shopping. I'll take 2 of them. Thank you." So that's part of the obstacle too, is people look at it and they don't always want help, even though they need help and they don't understand the thing. They look at our product and they say, "Oh, that's a challenge. I can do better. Why don't you have this in there? Why don't you have that in there?" It's like, I'd love to sit down and talk to you. Like, one of the controversial things is we took the knife out of our go bag. And people are like, "Why would you take the knife out? Every single property got to have a knife." And yeah, what do you need the knife for? Please explain it to me. Sit down and think about what you need the knife for. Do you know how to skin a rabbit? And so if you're going to tell me that you need a knife in there so you can skin a creature so you can eat, do you know how to do that? Because by and large, most people don't. And then it's like, "Oh, well, you could use it for batoning wood." And okay, so you're going to use a knife to work wood. Well, we provided you a handsaw, because that's going to make your life a whole lot better when you're working wood.
I would think a gun might be good to have in there to keep your neighbors away from your go bag.
Yeah, well, that's a whole concept too. The gray man philosophy, right? If you want to fit in, and so our bags are gray instead of the tactical black, so that it draws less attention. There's a whole concept with that behind that as well. How to remain anonymous so that your goods don't become a target.
Okay, give me the etiquette on this. I want a professional's opinion. So if I have a generator, my neighbors have all chosen not to have them. The hurricane hits, the power's out for 2 weeks. What is my obligation to all the people who chose not to have a generator? Am I the pig in the brick house that just invites everybody in? Or do I say, hey, it's every man for themselves. You chose that path. What is the route that's the human route to take there?
Can't speak to that. I can't go ahead and make a blanket statement. There are going to be a lot of factors in that, though. A lot of factors in that. What relationship you have with if you become that guy who says everybody step away, do you then become a target? Yeah. I'll say this, that is a very, very big real life situation that in our class, what we would talk about is plan that ahead, right? So I would say this, when you made the decision to go out and get your generator, did you tell your neighbors? Give that word of mouth. Like, hey guys, I'm going to get a generator because I feel it's important for where we live, right? Share that knowledge, right? That's what we recommend in the class, because you have the forethought. That's fantastic. Not everybody does. Not everybody's opposed to it. Some people just don't think ahead. They just don't have that capacity. Where if you had said, hey, I'm heading over to Home Depot to grab a generator, they're on sale because this is not the season for generators. I'm going to get mine now because it's going to be a third cheaper than if I wait. You might want to get one too. Oh man, generators are on sale and they're cheaper now. Yeah, great. Share that knowledge, right? That's what I would recommend always. Knowledge share, so that you don't have to be in that situation when you're the only guy with it and everyone's looking at you like, we're cold and you've got heat.
Hey, you guys are much younger than me, but there was a show called The Twilight Zone. You've probably seen the reboot, which isn't as good. But there was a bomb shelter episode on there where this family had a bomb shelter in their basement. There was a nuclear threat, and all the neighbors tried to break in because they thought it was everybody's bomb shelter. And I've told my wife, this is a real situation that would happen because we care about our neighbors. I mean, I wouldn't want anybody dying from heat or having problems. But at the same time, people choose, well, maybe I'm going to get the boat. Maybe I'm going to go on a trip. I don't need that generator until they need it. And then it's a problem. And it's the same with building a house of concrete versus a wood house. When your house gets wiped out, it's a tough call.
It is a tough call. Yeah. And that's why what we recommend is, we'll talk offline. George, you get in contact with us. We'll go ahead and put on a class for your whole neighborhood, right? So everyone gets all that information at the same time in an open forum where they can ask questions and have this conversation and communicate together as a community. That's our solution to those types of things.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing for people to think out in any situation, because you see it every year, billions of dollars in damage and disaster problems. I had a gentleman on the other day, the former FEMA director, who talks about all the places he went where he shows up and people are just, they didn't realize they needed flood insurance. They didn't realize their house was going to blow away at a strong wind. I mean, we're just so not ready for disaster.
Yeah. And that was funny you say that, because we just were recording we have our podcast disaster class, and yesterday we were talking with some insurance experts. We're going over that very thing, even just something simple as insurance, better educating people with these topics. So it's a big project, and that's like for us, it's not necessarily with our class and in our podcast and everything. We're not necessarily providing a specific solution for every problem, but we're teaching these really important concepts. We're taking emergency management concepts like identifying hazards, assessing risk, what's your vulnerability, and then we're teaching them these concepts so that they can apply it to their life and make better informed decisions.
Yeah. So the hazard identification, risk assessment then leads to mitigation, right? Because if you can assess those hazards, you've seen these things. Now it's like, okay, I've got 6 hazards that I have to deal with where I live in my community. Let's rank them. What's most important? What's most likely? Now, what are my answers and my solutions for each of those things, right? We literally take individuals through that in our class, because we have what's called an EAP, an emergency action plan. every individual and family should have one. We walk them through and do it together as a class, so they build that muscle memory and they have that understanding of how to fill that document out. Then we give them the tools so that when they go home and they do this in depth as a family exercise and practice, they can really have a robust plan created for each of the hazards that they've identified and all of the risk that they've assessed. And then they have their mitigation plan in place for each of those things. So when something happens, literally it's like, oh man, we're having a tornado. Page 4, here's what we do. We've already talked about it. Everybody, let's go to page 4 and take care of it. So that's literally why we do what we do. And it's extremely rewarding when we put people through the class, because they get it and they thank us for it. And they are so appreciative, and they put these things into practice. And that's where we educate. We prepare them now, because we give them the mindset, and then we equip them. You want to buy some stuff from us? Buy some stuff to facilitate that. If you don't buy it from me, I don't care, but I've given you the education.
Yeah, there's so many simple things people can do. They think it's really complicated just from having a photograph of everything in your house. You just walk around with your cell phone and take pictures, and also read your insurance policy. There's a reason they make it 65 pages in small print, because there's a lot of things they're not going to cover that could cost you everything. And, it's not their goal to just pay you.
Right. And they're trying to figure, like, it's funny. So Jason was talking, we just had this segment that we were taping yesterday for our podcast. And we have these insurance team on with, because we're all about collaboration, right? We're not subject matter experts for every subject. We can't possibly be, but we're trying to use our connections to bring that information to people through our podcast. So they were just talking about how people just go through, they click, they try to get the cheapest thing possible. And at the end, because they have their insurance policy, they think they're great. They gave us the example of some people that did that, I think in Colorado, because they were in Wyoming. So in Colorado, and it was hail damage for their roof. And the way they had selected the property setup, or the insurance claim setup, was they did it on a percent deductible of total value of your property, because they thought that was the cheapest thing. Their property was assessed at like $350,000. So at 10%, that was their deductible just to get their roof fixed. Right. Like, and it's just, the insurance adjusters are saying, like, we have a flat rate $1,500 deductible. You just ask us for, we can do that. Would you rather pay the $1,500 deductible, or would you rather be hit with a bill for $35,000 to get the process started? They had no clue. They hadn't looked at their policy. They hadn't thought it through. They hadn't talked to anybody. It's like, yeah. So we're safe. We're covered. We have insurance. Are you really?
Yeah, we found out in Mexico Beach, Florida. We were talking to one of the local disc jockeys there, who had to talk to radio hosts, who talked to all the people that would call in, that had never read their policy. They didn't understand that if it's a named storm, they didn't have coverage for it. They had absolutely no coverage. And these are such simple things that when you're, if you live in a southern state, this is the time of year to be making your preparations. They always have Hurricane Preparedness Month in May. I think that's a little late to start preparing.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And that was one of the recommendations of the insurance adjusters that we talked about. They said it's their goal in their office, because they're very proactive, to get every single person that has coverage from them in their office and have a discussion at least every 12 months. Because even though it's set once, doesn't mean things haven't changed in your life, and insurance coverages haven't changed. So not just have it, but then be proactively every 12 months, go in there and reassess your coverage to make sure it's still custom tailored to fit you perfectly.
Yeah. And you probably want to talk people off of thinking, well, I had a year where I think I overpaid for insurance because we didn't have anything go wrong. So maybe they lower their insurance or they cancel it, and then it goes bad the next year.
Yep.
Correct.
Absolutely
so
crazy. So
we could talk for hours just about insurance, right? Like, and that's why our class, it has turned out to be 3 hours, which is funny, because initially when we did it, it was a 1 hour class. We're like, all right, let's just bug them for an hour, get them out of here. And the feedback overwhelmingly from the people that took the class, which we were flabbergasted by, they were like, wow, it's a really good course. We love it. It should be longer. It should be twice as long at least. We're like, you want more class? Who goes to class and says they want more class? So we knew we were onto something. Jason and I aren't the most boring people in the world, so we have found that. And it's translated through to the class where the people like it and they wanted more of it. So we were like, all right, let's make them more robust. So we connected with someone that has their master's in education. They're a New York educator. And we got our curriculum up to be as robust as possible. And now it's about a 3-hour course that we put individuals through. We have them take a test. We send them a certification at the end so they know what they know. And it's making some people's lives a little better.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an important thing to do, because people are just living with that, a couple lines from our film that just stick with me. Hope is not a strategy, because people hope nothing bad's going to happen, and that ends up being their strategy.
And now what?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then the other one from Brock Long, who was the former FEMA director, said, if it rains where your house is, it can flood.
Period.
And most people don't think I don't live in a flood area. Flood insurance isn't very expensive if it's not supposed to flood.
Yeah. So get
exactly. It.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what advice would you guys have for somebody who is entrepreneurial? You guys have started a business. You seem to be having some success with it. What would you say to somebody who has an idea they think could go somewhere, but they're just not doing anything with it? What kickstart or motivation what would you say to them? Well,
Jason, if you want to go first, I'll go after, because I have a lot to say on that subject.
Yeah, I know. We both have a lot to say on this. What I have found, and I think what me and Wesley both have found, is like, if you have an idea and you want to get something going, it's hard to do it by yourself. You need a team, and you need somebody behind you who believes in your vision. But more importantly, and I'm sure Wesley is going to speak to this too, is surround yourself with people who aren't just yes men, but people who think differently and who challenge you. Because me and Wesley are very different people. We have very different personalities, but each of our, like, where my strengths are, or where my weaknesses are, Wesley fills that gap. And likewise, so it's like we're a really good balancing act, and we don't always agree on everything, but we challenge each other, and I think because of that, we've been able to make some really cool stuff happen, and I think that's, when you just have everybody who thinks just like you, I feel like you're going to be missing a lot, and you're not going to be getting to where you want to go.
Yeah, and for me, I am probably a serial entrepreneur. I am pro entrepreneurship. I say, if you have an idea, first thing I say is go for it. Do it. There's no better time than today, except maybe yesterday, but that's already gone. So do it, because you might have the best thing that the world needs. So go for it. First of all, believe in yourself and go for it. Second, what Jason said, absolutely. You got to have a team. I'm the type of person where I've had multiple businesses. I've been in operations. I've been the right-hand man. I've done it myself a few times. With Jason in particular, and I tell this story because I like to, even in our podcast, I get on Jason a lot and we go back and forth because we're very, very close, but I have to give him his props. He was the first person that I really think ever outvisioned me. That doesn't happen to me very often. No, really, it doesn't. I usually have all these plans and grand schemes, and I'm coming up with business ideas all the time. I sat down and talked with Jason at a time where I was about to start a business doing this in this industry. I had legitimate job offers to work with 3 other people that had money, and they were ready to back me because I had a little thing called Go Back Wesley prior to meeting up with Jason. And I was literally taking offers, looking at my options, and then I met Jason. He was the one that represented the biggest learning curve for me. I knew I could learn the most by working with him. And he's 100% right. We don't think the same way all the time. And we have very, very aggressive discussions from time to time. Passionate. There was one time where it like his wife was like, yo, are you guys okay? Like, but we needed that. And because we look at things differently and come at the answers from different directions, it forces us to really prove the validity of an idea and sell it before the company moves forward. And as a result, it allows us to hopefully make continually really good decisions because we're coming at it from 2 different angles. So I second what Jason says. Don't have yes men. Don't have people around you that are just going to say, oh, it's a great idea. No, quantify that, qualify it. Why is it a good idea? How could it be better? Help me tweak it. My goal isn't to sit there and pontificate and just have people tell me I sound good. I don't care about that. I want to make progress. I want to do something. I want there to be purchase in those decisions. So having a team around you that can challenge you is so valuable, so valuable.
All right, great advice. So how do people find you guys? How do they find your podcast? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so people can find us by going to our website, instinctready.com. and also our podcast disaster class, which is part of the Readiness Lab. So if you can go to readinesslab.com and find our podcast there, we're on all the major podcast platforms. So there on our website, instinctready.com, you can find more information about our community emergency planning class. In addition, our social media accounts, we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all that. So you can connect with Wesley and I.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, hey, guys, again, thanks for your work as first responders. I mean, you're literally lifesavers. And, that's held in very high regard. We appreciate the work that you do, and continued success with the website and with the podcast. Thanks for coming on today.
George, thank you very much.
George.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. If you enjoyed what you were listening to, please like the episode. There's a link in the show notes so you can share it with your friends. And we hope you subscribe and become a regular listener of the podcast. And if you have any ideas for future shows, there's a contact form on our website, tellushowtomakeitbetter.com. I'd love to hear what you thought about the show, or if you have any ideas for future guests. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.